Hello everyone, welcome back to the unit tier list where I rank every single unit in a game. Infantry part 2. Before we go into it or continue it, some bit of housekeeping. First of all, thanks for the support. It's a lot more people are interested in it and watching it than I expected, so thanks for that. Usually I don't mention it, but really for once I have to mention it because it's actually blown me away a bit. Second of all, regarding the tier list, someone was suggesting to categorize infantry and not have every infantry in the same tier list, which I understand why, although I think outside of rifle infantry, like normal infantry, the other tier lists of other infantry squads, such as manpads and ATGM squads, may be a bit less interesting and effectively be only 2 or maybe 3 tiers and not a lot of variants. So I think it makes sense to have all infantry in the same thing, especially since certain infantry squads in certain transports actually aren't just, Saipari and the BTRT aren't just flamer squads, right? So they are a lot more comparable to something like, I don't know, like a Marder 2 card or something along those lines, But I also thought it doesn't really make sense to do like a categorization for tanks, Sure, you could in theory go for like sub 40 points, sub 100 point tanks and then have like 3 tank categories, but I don't think there's really a lot to gain from that. Same thing with planes, while they are, of course, I don't know why I'm switching, here it's all empty anyway. While there are seaplanes and bombers, there's also a lot of multi-role planes, or like in-game categorized as multi-role. Even if you only have like an aim 9, you're already multi-role. So it's very wishy-washy, no clear-cut categorizations in gameplay-wise, that is. So I don't think there's a lot of sense there either. But the one thing I think where it actually makes quite a lot of sense, and probably the most sense in my eyes, is actually dividing the support into AA and artillery. Recon, I think you can't. You could, of course, in terms of infantry and vehicles or something, but I don't think, again, you gain a lot from that. But I think support is where it makes the most sense. So I will like tanks, recon, vehicle, helicopter, and but hold on, I'm just too many thoughts at the same time. But yeah, I will keep everything, just tanks, just recon, just helicopters. But I think support just like divided into artillery and anti-air. Let me know what you think about that. And I just remembered, should I also, in terms of vehicle, do vehicles and transports on their own? Because I will, of course, also rate just the transports, irregardless of infantry. I'm wondering if I should do that separate from vehicles as well. It's not gonna be all too interesting, since of course there's a lot of very, very similar units, like a lot of 5-pointers that are essentially the same. But I think it might just be easier if one would come back on this list at some point later and take a look at it. And then I think it may be easier to, if one looks at the vehicle tab, to realize what is actually a transport and what isn't. If the S tier is just full of 5-pointers, and the one who wants to build a deck and can't find anything like that in the vehicle tab, it might be a bit confusing. So I think anti-air and artillery split makes a lot of sense. A vehicle split probably, like vehicles and transport split probably as well. I guess maybe I should do that for helicopters as well, although there aren't that many helicopters, so I don't think it will be too cluttered there anyways. But I think in the vehicle tab it would make sense, just given the amount of units there. And that is nearly all. Lastly, I fixed something. I accidentally put the genie in the E tab, even though every other flamer squad was in the D tab. I think. No, wait, no, they're gone. Did I just... Oh, there's no genie. Well, they're supposed to be here. I forgot to add them, apparently. And I fixed some typos, like I had Canadian Airborne or something like that. Anyway, now let's actually get into the tier list, or continuation of the tier list. I think I did everything I wanted to mention. So we stop at Givati, What did you rank them? C tier? Wait, what? Why are they not showing up? What's going on? Okay, I have to check my video real quick. Why do certain units not show up anymore? Sorry for this being so scuffed, but I just forgot to put them in the C tier. C tier. Okay. Using Razzmann, give Razzmann, fast giving, I guess, Driller to. Okay, I think everything else should be fine. Very scuffed, very scuffed. Okay, now we can actually go on. So Givati, C tier, like I thought. Gongbobyong. 10-man recoilless rifle squads, shock, 30 kmh is nice. They have a fairly short range recoilless rifle with only 1200 meter range. Some okay accuracy, but only 12 AP. And they have a pretty bad MG. I believe actually Bochung's, I think they have line MG stats, right? Well, Bochung-su. Oh no, I think what actually happened. Let me compare this really quick. So those are Bochung-su. I think either Bochung-su got accidentally the accuracy boosted to 10% to 30%, or Gongbobyong didn't get theirs boosted to 40%. But as you can see, right, the stats, except for the ammo count, of course, the stats are exactly the same. And Bochung-su, while have a slightly above average MG, I believe, Gongbobyong, of course, won't have anymore. At the end of the day, though, for 20 points a shock squad, even if it's not the best MG, having a recoilless rifle, not the worst deal. They're not great, but they're usable. BTR 60 PB can actually be kind of nice. Yes, it's only 1 armor. Yes, it's only 10% KPVT, the base one. But I think for squads like these that you don't spam, that you are using at key moments in the opener to defend certain towns for a while your reinforcements are coming, your slower ones, for stuff like that, it's actually sometimes preferable to pay the 5-point premium to have something with a KPVT. Although, of course, BTR 80 for the same price with more armor and a better accuracy is obviously even better. But they're certainly not amazing, but I think they're still good enough to be in the C tier. Just to the verge of being 10-man shock squads with a recoilless rifle, even if it's a rather bad recoilless rifle. I think that speaks enough about how useful they can be, actually. Gongbyong without Bob. Just another flamer squad. I don't think we really need to talk about that. No unique transports either. Gongbyung. Wow, I never even realized the only difference is like one letter. They're basically, they're the same as assault engineers. So I think as you can see, we're already making a lot of progress with like a lot of duplicate units essentially. Base Gornostrelki, they're only regular, which is unfortunate. They're effectively line infantry version of Leichte Schützen, right? Leichte Schützen. Shock squad, same price, same armament, just simply better. While also just not having significantly better transports, if any better transports at all. You get a Hind, you get an MTV, which is nice. You get a BTR 70, which is okay. Still though, D tier. They're like, even if they're not very good for the price, they can be somewhat useful, but yeah. Gornostrelki 90. Now, I think this is going to be a bit controversial. I think they're actually kind of underrated. They're certainly not amazing, but I do think they are underrated. 10 HP, 26 AP, 1500 meter range. That is really good, even if it's only on a line squad with PKM for 30 points, like a line squad, line infantry regular squad for 30 points. is very oof, while only really coming in if essentially 2 transports, being the MTV and the 24D. The other ones are useless. So it is very, very expensive. But honestly, I think certain people, and especially Putin, will not agree with this. And I can certainly see why, but honestly, for me, they're still B tier. They can be really nice defensively in towns. Pushing with them is virtually impossible. I mean, pushing with the MTV is nice, but Gornostrelki, like for aggressive usage, not very good. But genuinely, I think they're underrated a bit. Maybe I overrate them. You know, I'm not. That's certainly a possibility. But I still can't use them every now and then, and I still think they're worth using. Okay. Granatomet AGS-17. They're very interesting. So these type of squads, they're just defensive powerhouses. For one, the grenade launcher makes very little noise, meaning that when they're firing from a building or from a forest, it's incredibly hard to detect them unless you're like standing right next to them. You know, if an infantry squad fires with its MG, you'll basically spot them nearly all the time because it's a good amount of noise. But these AGSs, these grenade launchers, they have such a low noise value. They just melt infantry in seconds. But of course, just like with other fist squads, because from the background they're kind of like, I mean, they're also fire support squads, right? They have only 5 HP, right? They tend to have not as great availability as other squads. I think there might even just be 12 per card, even. But they have an MS-17 transport, they have a Vidra 2 transport, they have a 5-point transport if you want them. They're just niche in a way, because especially in non-spec decks, right, when you have 5 cards, they don't fulfill a certain very important role, such as meat shields, all-round fighting infantry, ATGM, manpad, something along those lines. They're the type of unit that you're like, they're so cool and they're nice to have, but I just can't fit them in. Still though, I'm gonna put them in B tier. Kind of, part of me wants to put them in A tier, but I think that might be too much. I mean, just purely based off of using the unit fairly rarely in EXAM block unspec decks, let alone on taunt, speaks about it not being in the A tier. Grenadiers. This is a tough one. A tier for sure, right? They're a solid 10 regular squad. They have an FAL, which is nice. They have a good 5-pointer, great 5-pointer. They also have a good autocannon transport. But I don't think they're worth. I don't think they're S tier, just for that. Or are they? This is actually one of the toughest reasons. The same goes for the base riflemen. Are they S tier or only A tier? Quote unquote only A tier. This is genuinely tough. Because they're so versatile, they're so good. You have even multiple options, right? You can spam them for the autocannon transport, or you can spam them in the 5-pointer, which is a great 5-pointer, just for like meat shields and like, you know, filling the map with the units purposes. This is the good 5-pointer. This is also an alright 5-pointer, right? This is amphibious, but the one extra front armor here is just so useful. Or this transport, which is like a slightly worse KAFE25, right? 5% lower accuracy. Man, oh man. I mean, Dragoner, I had an S or have an S tier. Basic Wehrman only an A tier, though they don't get such a good 5-pointer. This is really tough, I have to say. Mm-hmm. Ah, I don't even know what to say, right? I'm just. Fine. I'll put him in the S tier for now. This is one of the units that maybe I'll change my mind on at the end. With the star, of course, right? Without the 5-pointer and the autocannon transport, it certainly would not be S tier. This is maybe something that I will change my mind on. Maybe the same with Dragoner. But for now, this is tough. This is tough. Gurkhas. No, that's 30 points for SMG one shock, which is okay. Probably the worst MG you can get on shock. I mean, MGS is supposed to be, right, it's similar to Gongbobyong, but Gongbobyong probably have a non-intended stat on their MG. But when it comes to like, the brand is just garbage, and on shock is for 30 points. They're just straight up D tier. They're just D tier. Gurkhas 90. I'm on the fence. I'm not really a huge fan of them, but maybe I underrate them a tad. Not by a lot, but a tad. In a similar way to Falski Mega who actually gained something out of being 15 men. Maybe the Gurkhas do too. Just for like having that law output for 15 HP. However, the law, I mean, the law is great. But not when it's your high-end AT, right? 22 AP just doesn't quite cut it. You need 3 shots for 15 armor, meaning M1 Wilk and M84A most notably. T72B and B1, M1M as well, although those are a bit rarer. That Wilk and 84A especially. Base M1 Abrams has 15 AP armor. The base Leopard 2, although nobody uses that, has 15 armor. So that's 22 AP is just not the nicest threshold. So the Law 80 on line infantry squads for 15 points, like Fusilier 90s. Law 80 is amazing. But when you pay 30 points for a squad that comes in, that doesn't even come in a Lynx H7. Not so great. Not so great. You get them in a Saxon, which is an alright wheel transport. What else do we have in the B tier? And we have Canadian Airborne 85 and 90 in there. I'll put them in the B tier for now. It's a bit overloaded, the B tier, but I think I hello, I'm typing. You know what? Sure. But I think I slightly underrate them. Base Haebyung. They're just whoa. Assault rifle, probably the worst anti-tank weapon you can get on a shock squad, if I had to guess. And like a horrible MG. Or like a standardized MG, but when you pay 25 points. They're not like completely utterly useless, but they're close to it. Haebyung 90 on the other hand are straight up A tier. I don't think they're quite S tier. They don't have the primary weapon or the transports to make them S tier. But they have a mini-me clone, stat clone. They have a Panzerfaust 3. And an assault rifle. It's not a battle rifle, it's a standardized assault rifle. Maybe it has better. Yeah, it has a. Because apparently in real life the K2 has like a folding stock and that gives it a better stabilizer or something like that. So it's a bit better than a standardized assault rifle. But they have just very basic transports, so I don't think they are quite cut out for S tier. And of course, Panzerfaust 3, it's very, very, very good. It's not Eric's level, so they're not quite S tier, but certainly A tier, definitely. They're just all around great. Again, one of the squads with the 15 HP might be an upside, you know, as opposed to 25 points with 10 HP, 30 points for 15 might be preferable. Heimatschützen. they're about as mediocre as they can be for reservists. And they have battle rifles, which is probably the best thing you can get. Like the thing with the reservists is, right, after their first few shots or something, their primary weapon is essentially useless. But with battle rifles, of course, you have that acceptable base accuracy that while you're in the first seconds of engaging, while you're calm, you might actually hit a few shots. So battle rifle is probably as good as it can get. Blindicide, whatever it's called, might be the best reservist. Where can I? There we go. Let's quickly take a look. 15% accuracy and 14 AP might be the best you can. I mean, you get. Hold on, Hemvärnsmän. Everything else. 20 RPM with 14 AP. That's better than. Yes, actually, it's slightly better than in law. Medium also got the blindicide. It's garbage L rack, whatever it's pronounced. Yeah, is probably the best you get. Maybe some people would say the law is a bit better due to the 20 RPM. It's certainly arguably the best anti-tank weapon you can get on reservists, but you don't buy reservists for that. You buy them to just die, right? However, the transport is as basic as it can get, so in general, I'm not the biggest fan of reservists, but I just think Heimatschützen, they aren't worth it. In every other deck that West Germany has access to, you get better reservists, or better, not necessarily better reservists, but when you're playing Landshut, you get Dragoner spam, which is just more versatile. With France, you get reservists, which have a much better 5-point transport. And with the Dutch, you also get reservists with a much better 5-point transport. Still, though, I think they're still honestly C tier, because even if they're just these reservists, they're still good for just meat shielding. Even if it's a 5-point transport that dies to one shot to nearly everything, it's still like 10 points for a 10 HP squad and a 5-pointer, which isn't useless by any means. Hemvärnsmän might be the worst. Reservist squad there is. For one, you have to get them in a 10-point transport, which is as average as it can get. Secondly, even though they have an MG, it's easily, I think, as far as I remember, by far the worst MG in the game. And yeah, you pay 20 points for a 15-man squad that is slow as fuck in a very basic transport. They're just, sure they're 15 men, but like 20 points. That's just horrible. For the same price, you can get 2 LHV squads, right? The Norwegian reservists, which are 2 10 HP squads and 2 5-point transports, albeit tracked. But the thing is, you don't really gain much from them being in a wheeled transport. So honestly, I think they're so bad, I would consider them a waste of points. Maybe I'm a bit exaggerating here, but I think they might actually be E tier. They're just that's how bad they are. Base Highlanders. No. They're essentially regular squads with 15 points worth of weapons, which is already not so great. And you pay 5 points for 5 extra K-Mage. Right? You get a basic battle rifle, you get a Kalgos FM2, and you get a C6. I think you get maybe a bit more ammo, but when you compare them to, 1 second, the Panzerschütte, which is these ones, right? Same MG, same rifle. All you get is 3 more rounds for the Kalgos and 5 extra HP, and a different selection of transport, which is honestly a worse selection of transport, because all you get are some very basic wheel transports and 3 helicopter transports, right? So straight up D tier. Highlanders 90, however, they're alright. I mean, sure, you know, they're essentially Legion 90 for the same price, but regular instead of shock, which means they're significantly worse against infantry. And also a bit slower. Although they still have the same speed as normal shock squads, but Legion 90 are of course light shock squads, so they're 30. But still having the Erics alone at least a mini-me to make up for the fact that they're only regular squads for 25 points. Still solid. The main issue is just that being line squads, having lower veterancy, and thus being less accurate, and in general not killing enemy infantry as quick or at all before dying themselves, thus getting panicked more easily and panicked faster because they can't panic the enemy as fast as shock squads would, etc, etc. In general, they're just a lot less consistent than Legion 90. And as such, they're just B tier. Spoilers, Legion 90 will be S tier, but I think... I mean, let me put it this way. I don't think Highlanders 90 should be above. They're fine as they are. They're not as good as Legion 90, but on even without Legion 90 and Housekeeping and 90 being in the game, for 25 points, they shouldn't be 20 points. I'm not by any means. They're fine at 25. But they're balanced. The Legion 90 are not balanced. That's the difference. They're still solid, but by no means a must pick. They're still a good pick, not a must pick, just due to their inconsistency. I mean, I don't think I need to say anything, just worthless 5-point manpad. Worthless 10-point manpad. I think you're probably even better off with the 5.1. Hudou-Ren. Now they're kind of nice. They're kind of similar to Gongbobyong, but they have a bit better rifle, which is probably preferable. Again, keep in mind they're the type of squad similar to Gornostrelki 90, Gongbobyong as well, that are great in like openings and for like defensive purposes, defending towns, etc. For the same price, you get more range. You lose 5% accuracy, but you get I think 1 more AP and more suppression. You get a better MG. And a battle rifle. And when you're just sitting in a town, right, not moving, a battle rifle is obviously much more preferred with the extra accuracy and the worse stabilizer. In general, battle rifles are preferred, but even more so in a defensive position. And on top of that, you get a great transport with the Q-Roku WAPC, which can massively help with like dealing with infantry or assaulting towns, killing the infantry inside, and then hopping into the building yourself. And then later on, if you're getting assaulted by infantry, the Q-Roku can deal with incoming infantry. It's just a very, very solid combination. And honestly, I would put in A tier. Maybe it's a tad too much, but I think they're just really, really good. I think in general, I maybe tend to like these type of recoilless rifle shock swords more than other people do. So maybe I'm a tad overrating them. Again, this is not like a be-all end-all list of all units, and this is exactly what their tier is, and you should all follow this list that I'm making here, of course. But I just really, really like them. Mistral squads, I think same with like most or many other manpads. I would say they're better than Fliegerfaust 2 or like Stinger C in many scenarios. I think it also depends. Okay, let me retract that. It also kind of depends on what deck you're playing. If you're playing something like Mech or Armored, especially, let's say, Blue Dragon's Mech or Armor, for whatever reason you played it, or, okay, I guess Mech is fine, but Armored is not so great, or Eurocore Mech or something, and you lose your Crotal, you use a Tansam Short Arrow, and you only have your relatively expensive radar-based AA for decent helo coverage, right? 2,800 meter range on gun tank, on Gepard, etc. And then, of course, for one, that's the only really radar or helicopter-based AA you get. Of course, there's Roland 3, but it's sometimes a bit awkward with only 2 rounds, with only its 2 missile bursts, you know. And of course, the radar. And that's where, especially Mistral, is a lot more useful than stuff like Stinger, because with the significantly increased range, and of course not being radar, they're a lot more important to your anti-helo coverage. But when you're already playing a deck that has access to Igla, not Iglas, to like Ito 90, Crotal, Tansam Short Arrows, like strong anti plane anti-helo based units, like anti-helo snipers, I guess you should say, then you might prefer something like Stingers, like the base Stinger here, in like a 5-point transport for like a very cheap package, just to spread around for actual just additional coverage, meaning that your single more expensive helo snipers aren't as easily overwhelmed by helos just swarming into them, and then you have like 2 extra Stingers on each flank, you know, to help dealing with the helo spam, but also for like getting shots off on random planes flying around. So that's where you would prefer Stinger. And the Mistral, the more expensive but higher range, and also 5 HP, which can be useful but also sometimes not, because you have lower stealth. You know, the 2-man squads have very good stealth, the Mistral only good. And in these situations, you much more prefer the Mistral, because you need it to actually snipe single healer helicopters and such like that, because your other aim might be zoned suppressed by seed, etc. So that's why, even like stat-wise, the Mistral is much better, and many people would say, oh, in any case, I'll use Mistral over Stinger, but I don't think it's as easy as that. And that's why I think I will also put him in B tier. HYU-SAM Mistral. I don't know why I randomly capitalize things and sometimes not. I assume HYU-SAM, I mean SAM is surface air missile, but whatever. Redeye. I think it's clear, it's just useless. Besides, we already had the other Redeye as well down here, I believe. The Basak, I think, is also Redeye. HYU-SAM Stinger is just an A Stinger for 15 points. Same thing as always. I think the A Stinger, or like, okay, I think my favorite manpads might be base Iglas. They're also 15 points, but they have more range and 5% more accuracy. Of course, 1 less HE, but I much prefer them for like the helo coverage. Just spread them around the map, and then used them in 5-pointers. So 20 points for a manpad, and of course they have higher availability than Mistral, right? And the stealth is really useful when you're shooting from buildings or bushes, and then you're getting detected significantly later. Actually, that's not unnoticeable, the extra stealth. And then of course, when it comes to random artillery strikes, 2 HP is of course a lot less useful, a lot more squishy than 5 HP. But yeah, I think people underestimate just basic manpads. And with basic, I mean like Stinger and base Igla, and not Redeye. Redeye is garbage manpad. Haer Hjemmevaernet, or something along those lines. They're a very interesting bunch. So the first thing you have to keep in mind, their MG stats are identical to line infantry MG3 stats. So their MG, and pay attention to their MG, 1 second. Right, look at the MG stats, 875 meter range, 20% accuracy, 594 RPM. Exact same stats as on Gewehrman, or Dragoner, or Gewehrman 90. We have 200 less rounds, but who cares? Or fewer rounds. So that is very, very interesting. At 10 men, they're slow. They have an SMG, which is probably the worst thing you can have, and only the bazooka. But they're wheeled, and for some reason, I guess to not have them be utterly useless like the Swedish reservists, they're actually coming in a wheel transport for 5 points. That is not slow as fuck, meaning that this one is actually a bit fast, or a good bit faster than 5-point trucks. So I tried a bunch of times to use those actually as my line squads. Dragoner are still better, trust me. But I think they're a tad underrated because people overlook the fact that they have line infantry stat MG3s, and for the price of a Dragoner in a 5-pointer, you can get these, with the difference is they get to the front line much, much faster, right? Of course, the other difference is their anti-tank weapon is even worse, the primary weapon is close to useless, and the transport is also close to useless. So that is the price you pay for them being faster, which is not really worth it. Still though, they are not quite useless. But I think I'd overestimate if I put them in C tier. I think they're still only D tier. The more I think about it right now. Let's do it like that. I think God, Hjemmevaernet. I think there's still two. I think there's still actually not C tier. The more I think about it right now. Yeah. I mean they're not completely useless, but I think I still overrate them a tad. Now that I think about it. Because keep in mind right there on the lowest veterancy, unless you upvet them, then the second lowest, they're close to immobile. They get panicked very easily, stunned very easily. They take a long time to recover. So yeah, I think if there were 5 points and they came in the Danish 5-point transport with the MG3, now that'd be something. But then that'd also be just OP. Being a 10-point, being a 5-point reserve squad with a line infantry MG3 in the 5-pointer with 2 armor and a Browning for 10 points in total, that'd be just OP. Base Igla, I believe we already had a base. Did we already have the base Igla here? Maybe we didn't. We had the Igla 1. Doesn't look like we had a base Igla. I mean, it's the same thing as the as most manpads, right? And they have a good 5-point transport that is fast enough. You don't really care about 2 armor or something because you don't spam them, of course. Ildstottegruppe. Did we already have some Fist squads? Some Carl Gustav Fist squads? We had Gagnuni. Oh, we had Deckungsgruppe. Base Ildstottegruppe. Where did I put Deckungsgruppe in the B tier? They are... Yeah, they're in the B tier. Base Ildstottegruppe, they have a good 5-pointer. 2 armor, 2 front, 2 side, Browning, decent speed. And yeah, but I think they're not B tier worthy though. It's just the Deckungsgruppe have the 15-point Marder 1 that massively, or like not massively, but makes them better by a good bit. Ildstottegruppe don't have anything similar. They have a good 5-pointer, but again, a 5-pointer spam with like 5-man squads just isn't the same as spamming them with 10 HP line infantry squads. Ildstottegruppe 85 on the other hand, well, I myself haven't used them a whole lot, or just can't fit them in a lot. I know Putin really likes them, or at least he uses them a good amount. I think some other people also, maybe Colonel Talbot I've seen use it. I'm not 100% certain. Still though, that extra range and also extra AP, but especially that extra range is just such a nice thing. I think people sometimes underestimate the extra 175 meter range you get on the Kalkuts of M3, or you get on the Vampire over the Panzerfaust 3. That range is so good to have. And sure, they pay 5 points for it, but honestly, I think that, and this is admittedly just based off the fact that I've seen Putin use them to good effect, both against me and against other people. I think I'll actually make them beat here. Even though they have just, quote-unquote, just a good 5-point transport. 5-point transport and like nothing else. Like no other transport that really makes them shine. HYU-78, now here's the thing. You can use them to get a KT as cheap as possible, right? They're Strel to M, but you can use them to get a KT as cheap as possible. And call me crazy, but honestly that makes him B tier. The KT is just so ridiculous. The only reason why you don't really see that is because the infantry tab, because you, well, okay, let me rephrase that. The only reason you don't really see people use it is because you only get 2 cards of KTs. And that's because I think using them with either Erikois or Panzer-Jääkäri or a Jääkäri 90 is just preferable. But I think this, I'm not joking. This is actually a strong combination, and I think other decks would certainly, with the star, of course. And I think other people, other decks would certainly use it. So that thing alone is actually not a bad card. Not a bad card at all. Because if you think about it, for the same price, you get an LAV 25, right? Actually, for 5 points more, you get an LAV 25, which obviously nobody uses. But not only does it cost less, it's also so much better with like such a better auto. Like it's just crazy. It's just crazy. It's just, yeah. Of course, the thing is you don't get a lot of KT. You only get 2 cards of KTs, and it's an infantry tab card. HYU-86M it's just an Igla. I mean, sure, you get them in better transports, but that is actually not as impactful due to the much lower availability. So I don't think that really makes them A tier. I think they're still quote-unquote only B tier. They just don't benefit as much as coming in the KT. As nice as it is, and as cool as it would be, they don't quite benefit as much from it. Javelin, I'm on the fence on this one. The same price as Stinger, the same price as Igla, right? But they're guided and have lower accuracy. They have 5 HE compared to the Igla, but compared to the Stinger A, they have a bit more range, but also lower accuracy. It's tough. 5 HE and that range is kind of nice for only 15 points, but they're still guided. But I actually don't think that's actually that is a big deal that they're guided. The thing is, they're so short range that it happens very rarely that they actually lose line of sight mid-flight. Most of the time, they only get 1 shot off anyway. Plus, they have a bit lower reload time, so them being guided doesn't really make them significantly lower rate of fire. Plus, this is something that I still don't know. Do they already start the reload time once they fire? If you know what I mean, right? Because it's a guided missile, I wonder if the reload time or the reload counter already starts while they're guiding. It's still something that I honestly don't know, and I should know, but I still don't know. But I think, honestly, they're still B tier. People might think, oh, they're only 45% accuracy. It's just 5% less than Stinger A, and they have more range. And them being guided, again, not really a big deal, because you also have to keep in mind, 95% of the time your manpad is going to be stationary and not moving. 95% of the time that range, with that low range, it's very difficult to actually lose line of sight. So yeah. Jeogockdae, we had really bad 15-man squads earlier, right? The Haebyung. Jeogockdae, they're a tad better. They have just as bad of an MG. It's also just a basic assault rifle, but at least you have the RPG-7 over the base M72 law, but still. And they don't get the BTR-88 to really save them. They just get horrible transports. The 90 version gets a carbine, which is nice. I don't know if it counts as a carbine in real life, but stat-wise it surely does. Although this looks like just a AK-74 to me, or an AKM, whatever you want to call it, or 47, or in any case, they get a 23 AP, 700 meter range AT weapon at least, but it only has 50% accuracy. And 700 meter range isn't that great, and only 10 RPM. So the thing is, they're just also inconsistent AF, even more so than Gurkhas 90. And the only reason you see them is because they have a BTR-88. That is a nice transport. Is it enough to boost them into B tier? I honestly don't think so. For 20 points, they're just so average. And I don't think the BTR-88 makes them that much better. Like, I think... Like, I like using more Sky Perot 90 in the BTR-88 actually. But they get like an RPK, which is a much better MG. They're 5 points cheaper, and they still get like an acceptable anti-tank weapon. just for like the Morskaya is just for more or less pure town fighting purposes. I mean, still though, the BTR-88 is still pretty nice, you know. I'll put them in the overloaded B tab. I'm sorry. I hope you forgive me, but I think they're still okay actually, because even still 23 AP is still kind of nice. But you know, who knows? I mean, at the end of, I'll probably do like one extra episode after I'm done with the Infantry tabs, where I just go over all of them and see if I might re-rank them, or maybe I'll do it within the last one together with the last few squads. Who knows? So some things might still change. Okay, I don't know. Okay, Jiksa-Hwagi-Ban I probably butchered it. I'm sorry for that. Nobody uses them. Why? Because if you want, like, either you use Hudou-Ren or you use the Japanese ones with the Hachiki IFV. And then the thing is, these 5-man recoilless rifle fist squads aren't too great, because of course, as all other fist squads, only 5 HP is not so great, and having only 7 RPM is also not great. And the thing is, the normal, quote-unquote normal fist squads, they get the 50% rate of fire boost, right? The Gongbyong have 15 instead of 10 RPM on the Kaartinjääkäri of M2, so do Ildstottegruppe, etc. But the fist squads with the recoilless rifle don't get a boost, and that is just a big shame. And that makes them pretty yikes, so much that you only really use them for their transports, which they have at least decent ones, right? KAV and KAV 4050. And I think that makes them actually kind of usable. And they have one of the better recoilless rifles, right, with the M67. Not like the Biban Chungpo. So I think that's why I'll actually keep them in the C tier. I'm not giving them the star, because I think the star would be more like if they would otherwise be in the E tier. Without these transports here, the KFVs, they would be in the D tier, but effectively getting one extra tier due to the transports doesn't just yet justify a star at the name. Juckwidae, one of the only two, I believe, 5.15 HP reservists. Of course, they're only 15 HP for this price because the transport is a 10-point wheeled transport. That is what Eugen did to balance them, essentially, because if they were 5-point and 10 HP, they would just be so much worse than 5-point reservists and 5-point transports. But keeping, you know, but having them, but at the same time, 15 men for 5 points in 5-point transports as well would also be just so much better, you know. So to have like a middle ground, they're 15 HP for 5 points, but they get a 10-point transport only. So that balances it out. Of course, as General Bunencherry pointed out, if they had 5-point transports like other reservists, they'd be incredible. But if they had if that was the case, then they wouldn't be 15 HP, you know. Still, I'm not a fan of them. I'd much rather have a 10-point package, i.e. 5 plus 5 points with 10 HP. And you have to keep in mind that the SMG is useless. The AT weapon is pretty useless. And as such, I honestly kind of only put them in the D tier. They're not completely wasted. And I know that Putin actually likes using the Japanese ones in his China deck. But still, I don't think they're worth it. Like, I mean, he won quite a bit of games versus me with this China deck, with this Chinese decks. Some of games that I've been very annoyed at, but never in neither of those games I felt that the reserves were very significant. So I'll keep them in the D tier. I think Putin will disagree with me, or maybe, or at least to a certain extent, but no. Jäger, or like some people like to say, Jäger. Jäger are interesting. It certainly would be very ridiculous for 10 points. Nearly as ridiculous as Jääkäri 90 are right now. which isn't me saying they should be 10 points, not by any means, especially because they're in Eurocore, right? But for 15 points, they're also just, yeah. I think they have a usage, and that is maybe in like Eurocore motorized, to use them on veteran in the Fuchs, to have like affordable but still relatively strong, like defensive type of infantry squads to fill towns, not for actual town fighting, but for defending towns. They could be good there for like relatively cheap. Other than that, I just don't see a good or like if you want like a high vet, and again in the motorized, like if you want a veteran Milan, a Fuchs Milan, which sometimes you want, with a squad that after that can be useful to you for relatively cheap. Still, I think that'd be in unspec decks as well. That'd be good, not by any means amazing, but a good bit better and certainly balanced if they had a good 5-pointer, like a 2 armor, 2 front to side, maybe with a Browning as well. Then they'd be in a good place, I think, because as they are, 15-man line squads are just the only reason you bring 15-man line squads is if they come with great transport, such as the CV90 in the case of Gewehrman 90, or if they have, or maybe even Gornostrelki 90 in the BMP3, although that is even not the case very often, or Panzerskytte in the STRF 9040, or if they have a good AT weapon like Fusilier 90s. Jäger have neither of those, and the anti-infantry DPS for 15 points isn't that good anymore to use them, at least not in the current meta, because the current meta is basically all about, not all about, but in the current, or in the, with current I mean of course the same meta as it was like more or less 2 or 3 years ago. It's slightly shifted, but some things are still very much relevant, and that is the fact that fire support, both direct and indirect, are incredibly important, and as such, having good fire support is more important than having infantry that is good at killing other infantry. Of course, it is still a nice bonus, right? This is why Dragoner spam is just, in a 5-pointer, is just a lot stronger than Sanchi spam in 5-pointers, because both 5-pointers have 2 armor, both 5-pointers have a 50 cal, but the Dragoner have for the same price, an MG3, the Sanchi don't. And that means that not only are Dragoner very efficient at sponsoring damage, they're also pretty good at killing infantry for the price. So that is a really great bonus to have, but you don't want that to be the main point of your infantry, if possible. And that's why Jäger for 15 points aren't just very relevant anymore. And this is why I don't want them to be at 10 points, but this is why if they weren't in Eurocore, right, because Eurocore is of course a different thing. If they were, let's say, in HYU-SAM block, or in Blue Dragons, or in Red Dragons, of course Red Dragons, for 10 points they might be fine, simply because with how important fire support, I mean, they'd probably still be in a vacuum too strong for 10 points. But the deck wouldn't suddenly be OP, and Jäger wouldn't be probably the kings of the battlefield anymore either, simply because the direct and indirect fire support of the meta decks of Entente, of Eurocore, of USA, of USSR, of Baltic Front, of Israel, it's just so much more important. It's just so incredibly important. LRM, M1 Abramses, Eurogant, Plamont, you name it. Enough about Jäger. What's the here? Niche units or type of units the most used? Yes, I think this actually. I think this describes them very well. They're just a niche unit now that are only really used in like motorized. Maybe you might see them in like a Eurocore mech deck. Just 1 card of them on veteran as well, for a very similar purpose than in the motorized deck. Base Jääkäri, there's still honestly 8 here, because for one, the thing is, their MG. Let's compare them to what is probably easily the closest thing. Just the individual. I guess they're the same thing, right? So Chungsu are just the same as basic riflemen. So Chungsu, right? For one, you have the same assault rifle, stat-wise. You have the same anti-tank weaponry, but you have a much better MG. You have a bit less range, but that range, the range itself, like being able to engage at longer distances, is mostly useless. The extra range means that you gain a bit more accuracy when the enemy is close due to range scaling. But that extra accuracy is it's like maybe at force ranges, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3% extra accuracy, but it is not nearly enough to make up for the fact that the Jääkäri have 10% base extra accuracy. And you have a bit less suppression actually, which is not noticeable. But in tests, Jääkäri will still just mow over Sojutsu because they're MG. Not only does it have more accuracy, it has the same salvo length and salvo reload stats, meaning that I believe it's 10 shots and you reload for, I don't know, 5 seconds or 8 seconds. But let's just say for the sake of this argument, they're both MGs fire for 10 seconds, or for 10 shots, and after those 10 shots have to reload for 5 seconds. The thing is, the M60 and the PKM and the RPD and all the other MGs that have 428 RPM, they reload between each individual shots of those 10 shots for 1 second. The Jääkäri 90 MG does this with 0.8 seconds. So the salvo rate of fire is just 20% higher for I don't know what reason. And everything else is the MG is just in a sense better than the MG3, because according to Eugen, you don't have to pay premium for this MG if you get a better AT weapon, right? If you compare them to Gewehrmann 90 have to pay 5 points extra for this package because they have an MG3. But the KK62 is essentially, if you ignore the Minimi, which is just an outlier due to Digger's 90 being so weird, essentially the second best MG you can get on line infantry squads by a decent margin. And in a sense, the best MG on line infantry squads, because with a better AT weapon you don't have to pay premium. But this is going into a rant about DLC and Jääkäri 90 and Jääkäri, so let's start with that. Jääkäri, they are still great. Even if Jääkäri 90 didn't exist, they would be great. You can get them in the KT, you can get them in the BTR 50, which is an okay 5-pointer. It has 2 front armor, it has a 50 cal, so decent fire support. Main thing is, it is pretty slow off-road, has not the greatest autonomy, and has 1 side armor, which is not to be underestimated. Meaning that if you're reinforcing them and there's a sneaky MX-10, it will just instantly one-shot those BTR 50s, because it has 12 AP, I believe, which wouldn't be able to one-shot 2 armor. So the 1 side armor is actually more noticeable than you think. Still though, they're A tier, easily. And I don't think I have to tell you why, but Jääkäri 90 are certainly S tier. I'm not going to give them the star, because I think even without the KT they would be A tier. And I think base Jääkäri without the KT would still at least be B tier, if not still A tier. Some people say that they think the KT in Jääkäri 90 is overrated. I'm of the complete opposite opinion, because for one, you have to keep in mind you only get 2 cards of KTs, right? So you have to be mindful which units you get them with. If you get them with the card of Erikois, you get only 4, or if you're playing Finland, 5. But that's obviously looking at it from a try-hard perspective. If you're getting the KT with a card of Erikois, you get only 4 KTs for that card. And you have only 2 cards of KTs, right? So what do you get that second card of KTs with? Do you get them with Panzer Jääkäri 90? Then you get like 12 or 14 of them. But they cost 40 points, meaning you can't really spam them as much. They're still going to be amazing, but they're going to be a bit expensive. With the Jääkäri 90, not only do you get them cheap, you get a lot of them per card. I believe 16 or 18 in Baltic Front even, because they have a small availability bonus. So you get 18 KTs for 1 card of KTs. Meaning that you can spam KTs for a long time before running out, and you still have that second card of KTs to do whatever you want to do with them. You get a solid 10, you get one of the best line infantry squads in the game, even if you ignore the fact that, even if you ignore or consider them without a KT to give fire support, they're still very solid for line infantry squads. They're not gonna win against Dragoner most of the time. Sometimes they actually will, but most of the time they won't. But against most other line infantry squads, one-on-one, they would win. In force, they're still going to be somewhat formidable for dealing with 5-pointers at least. They will one-shot 2 armor 5-pointers. They have 20 RPM. So you get that very cheap package that I'm kind of baffled why people think that this is an overrated card, or some people actually think that you should not take them with this card. I'm of the complete opposite opinion, because the KT doesn't really need the veterans. The other point is, of course, right, the KT will be on a somewhat lower veterancy. But this has 60% base accuracy. You don't need that veterancy. It is already incredibly accurate. And this allows you to just spam KTs. And if you just want to suicide the KTs, you can still just unload the Jääkäri first, have some Jääkäri around the map to just fight, or just notify you if there's something sticking around wherever you hide those Jääkäri or whatever. So I'm just baffled why some people think that this is not a good card to take. Plus, with the way Baltic Front is played, you can very easily get away with an infantry type card that is only filled with 4 slots. Meaning that even if you think that fighting wise, ignoring the KT, right, this is not. Let me rephrase it. You can't even make the argument that there are so many other important, in my opinion, you can't make the argument that you can't do this because there's so many other things to fill the infantry tab with, because you only really need 4 things. Technically 3, but let's say 4 things. You need a card of spikes, card of Panzer Jääkäri 90, and probably 2 cards of Jääkäri 90 and a 5-pointer. Maybe 1 on and down with it, but I would always go for 2 up with it for your meat shields, and then you get 3 cards of Jääkäri 90, so you can get a 3rd card in the KT. Or do you get 3 cards? Like, let me show you. I know this is a bit. I need to briefly do this. I know again this is a bit rambling, but this is actually my old one. Shows stack without Jääkäri 9 in the KT. What an idiot. Wait, it's in this one? Yeah, here. Also old one, but here you can even take 3 cards. So I think this is most definitely not a wasted card. Okay. Rant over. Kaartinjääkäri, they're very interesting. Why? For one, if you look at them, or if you compare them to other shock squads, for one, they have SMG, right? But you might think they have a weird rate of fire, right? If you look at elite SMGs like Juckwidae, and we get to them later. You ignore the 80% accuracy, that's false. Elite SMGs have 533 RPM. Okay, on the set card, right? Shock SMGs, whoopsie, have, where are the Gurkhas? 342. Weird, but they're also 15 men. So what is it? Actually, the actual rate of fire is the same as on elite SMGs. So their SMG, they have the same rate of fire on the primary weapon as elite, which is crazy good. Let me actually open the armory tool so I can give you some proper numbers. Just a minute. They have the RPD while it's loading. They have the RPD, which is 72 low with 15 rockets, which is kind of hilarious. Alright, let's see. Kaartinjääkäri. So on the Suomi KP, the actual rate of fire is 53.33 per minute. Juckwidae base, Gurkhas base have 34.29. So it's more than a 50% extra, more than 50% higher rate of fire over a minute on the Kaartinjääkäri. So to compare it, hold on 1 second. Maybe falsche Mega aus Infantry. Yes. Okay. So this is okay. I didn't know that. Hold on. Let me quickly look up some other sets, because I'm currently. What other shock squads have SMGs? What other shock squads have SMGs? What other shock squads? because for some... Sorry for... Hold up, do Zanhanim? Zanhanim have the Uzi as well. Okay. Which is an SMG, of course. So... But before... Oh, okay. So I was just confused because I actually didn't realize that with the veterancy change, training change of squads, obviously the primary weapon ratifier changes, but I actually never realized that this is not only due to salvo reload and salvo shot reload, but also due to salvo length. In any case, the rate of fire on the Kaartinjääkäri is exactly the same as it is on elite SMGs. So 53 rounds per minute versus 34 on shock SMGs. And that is just crazy, right? They have a shot reload of 1 second instead of 1.5, a salvo length of 8 instead of 6, and a salvo reload of 2 instead of 3. So they fire faster between individual shots, they fire more shots, and after they fired all the shots, they reload also for lower time, which is just literally everything that affects rate of fire is better. Like, nothing is, not even the salvo length is the same, or the salvo reload, everything is better. So their SMG stats is actually crazy. So they're actually not the worst type of unit to use when you're looking for a squad that can just purely for town fighting, which is maybe something you want in Baltic Front, right? Jääkäri 90 being line squads, they're not great at town fighting. Panzeri Jääkäri 90, they're great. No, we got to them at a different point with the Apelas. So they're good all-round shock squads, but for dedicated town fighting, neither of them are gonna be great. So again, since you can, if you want to run Baltic Front with 4 infantry cards, or like 4 types of infantries that you basically always put in an infantry type, the 5th slot is always like a kind of a whatever you want to do there. So the Kaartinjääkäri is maybe something that you might want to put in there. Me, you saw it earlier, I like to use this Badochron, which are basically a Heimatschützen, but they're in a wheeled transport. Kaartinjääkäri might be something as well. The thing is, just outside of town fighting, they're just, I mean, the rate of fire of the SMG is gonna be nice in forests, but they have a pretty bad MG for shocks. They have a pretty bad AT weapon for 25 points. So that is really their only saving grace, is town fighting. And they're gonna be amazing there, because if you're in the same building as the enemy infantry squad, your accuracy of course doubles. It's just a thing that town fighting, like deep town, like small towns or like single buildings aren't really a big deal, because there you can very easily make up or just kill the enemy infantry with fire support, right? It's the deep towns, right? The big towns like Wanson Harbor or Tropic Thunder, where squads like these matter, because then it's very, very hard to actually get line of sight with your fire support. It's just that these type of towns, especially in 1 versus 1s, are just very, very rare these days. You have on Plunging Valleys a somewhat big-ish, like not the smallest town, but one of the towns in the 1-pointer. I guess in both 1-pointers there's towns where that are a bit deeper, so there they could be used. Or in Punch Bowl in the center 1-pointer in Bravo, I believe. It sometimes can be a bit awkward, but in general, towns aren't, or like big towns, or like town fighting with lots of town grinding with infantry is just not that relevant in 1 versus 1s. So they're very specialized, but even in the but that's really about it, right? So yes, I think they are just C tier. So if you're playing in a tournament and if you're playing in a tournament and you can send in side decks, meaning that certain units that you can switch from your deck that you had to send in and out, this is the type of unit that you would put in, right? So for certain maps or against certain decks on certain maps where you know, oh, that this town is important and I need to grind the town here, then you might put this in. But in your usual rank deck or something, I wouldn't suggest doing that. And that was the second episode of Infantry. How far did we get? We're like 1/3 through it. But we have to keep in mind there's going to be a lot of Iglas left and more Stingers left. So, yeah, there's like we have the Javelins here, another Blowpipe, another Redeye, another Stinger A, another Stinger A, Stinger C. And of course, you know, them having so many transports, of course, increases the, you know, amount of playstay it takes. So, we're probably going to need like 6 episodes, I would guess, maybe only 5, depending on how quick I am in later ones. Next episode we're gonna continue with the Commandosi, which are a somewhat controversial unit. I think they're like, I don't know why people have such a hard on for them, but we'll get onto that in the next one. In any case, here's the current tier list of infantry, how far we've got. What did we do? We got Hemvärnsmän, HN95, HN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, now we need 4 additional ones in the E tab. We got Gongbobyong, Gongbyung, Gornostrelki, Gurkhas. A lot of D and D tier infantry. I guess probably more than last time a bit. Some here. Once more, a lot in the B tier. Only 2 S tier squads. And only 3 A tier. So a lot of not so great squads today. And yeah, let me know what you think about splitting the support tab. Let me know what you think about splitting the vehicle tab. I think that's all there is to it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll hopefully see you next time.